Welcome in to First Things First. I'm Sarah Kustak in for Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter, and in for Nick Wright is Chris Canty and Chris Broussard. Happy Friday. I'm not happy, though. This has been a tremendous week.
No. You got to be happy. I'm very, very fortunate. You guys are part of our regular staff here. This is show 5-4. I'd like to thank you guys for being on morning TV. It's difficult. We launched this show, and you guys have been a big help to us. All the people on the staff, from me, from Jenna, from Nick. Chris doing double duty. They on vacation. All right? Thank you guys for having a successful show. We couldn't do it without you, and you guys know what you mean to the show.
Well, thanks for having us. It's been a great week. I'm enjoying it. Every day has been a lot of fun. Let's wrap it up strong. But I am happy because it is Friday.
All right. All of us. We got a lot to talk about today on the show, considering last night was a rough one for Cam Newton. All eyes were on the Panthers quarterback as he was making his 2019 preseason debut. But after a hit in the first quarter, Cam's night was cut short by what's being called a left foot sprain. And to make matters worse, Cam was seen leaving the stadium in a walking boot. Before the injury, Newton was, though, 4 of 6 for 30 yards. But see, what was your reaction to Cam's injury last night?
Well, this is part of the norm in the National Football League. If you play, it's a collision sport. If you play in the game, you play enough, no matter what size you are, you're going to get hit. And the fact of no one in the league, since Cam's coming to the league in 2011, quarterback has taken more hits than Cam Newton. So I just think over the last couple years, though, he's tried to take care of his body. I mean, he's accumulated over 1,200 hits since he's been in the league. But last night, when you're playing against a very disciplined New England, they're not going to let him get outside. You can see every time he tried to get outside, someone would make sure they got on his upfield arm to make sure they kept him in the pocket. Cam, the staff, the ownership, they've tried to do everything they can to be able to protect Cam. And he's played smarter football the last couple years. But this is just part of doing business. I'm not going to overreact. Last season when he got injured, he didn't get injured running the football. So he'd say, I know the question is, what about his style? He's changed his style. Last year, he got hit in the pocket by T.J. Watt. He put a lick on him. And when you play in this league long enough, there are certain guys, when they hit you, they're going to leave a mark on you, and the chance of you being injured are high in doing that. So we can't keep saying, well, Cam's got to change his style, change his style. Well, Carolina and their offense, if you can see the way it's designed, a lot of quick passing, get the ball out of his hand, that's to help him. But if that front five, if they don't do their job, Canty, the quarterback will get hurt. And last night, Cam, someone fell on his foot. I think from a precautionary measure, if they were in the regular season, I believe Cam probably would have finished that game. And the boot after the game is always what teams are going to do, preventative measures to immobilize that joint right there until they get an X-ray on it, which they're going to do.
No, you're right. They're going to be careful and cautious with Cam Newton. I'm just a little bit surprised that the offensive line wasn't better, because that was a point of emphasis going into the offseason for the Carolina Panthers. That's why they went out and signed Matt Paradis in free agency and paid him all of that money. He was going to be the guy up front that was going to direct traffic and continue to be a part of the group that was going to have to keep a clean pocket for Cam Newton to operate. Now, CC, you mentioned another thing. It's important to try to get the ball out on time. I think Cam Newton wants to do that, but the quarterback has got to be able to trust his protection. And you saw that on the first drop back yesterday. He had his eyes downfield, and he's getting contacted when he throws the ball. He hit DJ Moore for a short gain. But, I mean, you saw it in his body language. He was disappointed. He was shaking his head because that was something that he become accustomed to the last several years. That Carolina Panthers offensive line has to be up to the job of being able to protect their quarterback. You knew New England was going to try to come after you and try to hit Cam Newton. They're trying to get better for their pass rush. They were 30th in sacks last year, so you know Bill Belichick was looking at the third preseason game, the dress rehearsal, as an opportunity to see what his pass rush can do. But the offensive line, they've got to be better. Also, the tight ends and running backs, they're part of the protection scheme as well. Ian Thomas, Greg Olsen, those guys have got to be better. You saw Kyle Van Noy be able to get pressure on Cam Newton consistently last night. Chase Winovich was getting in on the action. The guys in the interior, Michael Bennett, Adam Butler. The Carolina Panthers, as an offense, have to have a collective effort in terms of trying to protect their quarterback. They're not doing it right now, and I'm worried about it.
Look, Ron Rivera said earlier in the week he'd be holding his breath when Cam's out there in the preseason. I was holding my breath, too, because as you guys know, I picked Carolina to win the division yesterday, and obviously this injury scares you a bit. I hope you're right, CC, that it's nothing more than an ankle sprain is what they're saying. But I was scared even before he got hurt because, as you guys pointed out, the offensive line, Pro Football Focus ranked them 10th in the league going into the season. They were supposed to be very much improved. You know, they drafted Greg Little to be on the line. They got Paradis. And I'm sorry, I just didn't see the protection. He was sacked twice in 3 possessions. And he all of a sudden is running for his life. And as you said, he's already taken so many hits. So that really concerned me, the offensive line. So even if it is just an ankle sprain and he's able to get back, now this has me wondering during the regular season how much protection he's going to be. And maybe a quarter, halfway through the season, is he going to be banged up again like he was last year?
See, I was talking to you this morning, and you said you at least feel better that it wasn't his shoulder, that it was a foot. Was there enough that we had talked so much about his new throwing motion and just how he's going to come back and respond in this preseason debut? Was there enough to even gauge where Cam might be at with everything else, with his shoulder, with his throwing?
No, there really wasn't. You've seen the tapes from practice. You can see that fundamentally he's just trying to make it like a golf swing. Instead of it being elongated, he's trying to make it tighter. He's trying to have his misses not be high. Typically, if it's high because his elbow drops down. Cam is very, very talented. And sometimes he just uses all of his shoulder to be able to throw. He'll wait for a guy to get open. He won't anticipate like the other great quarterbacks do. So he'll hold it a little bit longer, and then he'll have to try to force it and not be able to step into it. So those types of things, that's why I was glad it wasn't his shoulder. Don't want any type of setback from the surgery, from the procedure he had this offseason to be able to get his shoulder healthy. But Cam Newton, we're not going to be able to tell this until we get long into the season as far as the fundamentals. The reason why is because with the new NFL, with the new collective bargaining agreement, with the lack of practice time, the lack of physicality, you are going to see bad offensive line play. The last couple years, we've seen it in the first month of the season. That's where it's highlighted. Until they get those first 3 or 4 games under them, especially the offensive line, they will be a half tick behind the defensive line. Defensive football is easier to teach. It's easier to play earlier in the season. So let's not overreact, but let's just watch it. It's something. It should be a point of emphasis, and it should be. If they're going to have playoff aspiration, it's going to be based on that offensive line playing as one of the better offensive line we have in the league, Canty.
No, you're right. And with the offensive line position group, that's one of the position groups on the football team that needs continuity, and they need that chemistry in order to do their job effectively. It's all 5 of those guys working in concert with one another in order to create a clean pocket for Cam Newton. Last night, hit, hurried, or sacked in all 3 possessions that he was in the game. That ain't good enough. That makes it hard for your offense to get on track, to be able to effectively move the ball. And so for this Carolina Panthers team, I know that Ron Rivera wants to have the identity of being a bully and being able to run the football. But CC mentioned it earlier this week. You got to be able to score points. And in order to do that, you do have to have the threat of being able to throw the football. And if that offensive line can't protect Cam Newton better in drop-back situations, then it's going to be a long season for the Carolina Panthers. So, I mean, this is a situation that they dealt with a few years ago, back in 2014, when they played the Patriots in the preseason. They ended up fracturing Cam Newton's ribs, and he was unavailable for their season opener. This year, they got the Los Angeles Rams at home, and then they turn around and play a Thursday night game against a division opponent with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They need their quarterback to be healthy at the start of the year. I just can't believe what I saw last night in terms of them, the offensive line, allowing his health to be compromised in that fashion.
And here's the thing with Cam. He's tough. He's big, strong, and he's tough. He's only missed 5 games in his whole career, 8 years.
Yeah.
But it does seem like, especially the last few years, even though he's playing, he's always banged up, and he's not 100%. And that's what scares me. He may very well be able to play 16 games, but is he going to be banged up and playing at 80, 85% if that line doesn't get it together? So they got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and hope it's not too serious. All right, coming up, should Zeke be insulted by the Cowboys' latest offer? That's next on FS1. You could always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on SiriusXM. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Nick Wright, and hiring is challenging, but there's one place you can go where hiring is simple, fast, and smart. A place where growing businesses connect to qualified candidates. That place is, of course, ZipRecruiter.com/approach. ZipRecruiter sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards, but they don't stop there. With their powerful matching technology, ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. As applications come in, ZipRecruiter analyzes each one and spotlights the top candidates so you never miss a great match. And right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/approach. That's ZipRecruiter.com/APPROACH. ZipRecruiter.com/approach. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
We'll get to Zeke and the Cowboys in a second, but first, Raiders, Packers in Winnipeg. Keelan Doss makes the adjustment, and it's a nice toe tap for the reception.
Nice back shoulder fade here. Typically, when the DB has the better position, the quarterback, the only way he can throw it the back of his number. Wide receiver makes the nice adjustment up in Canada. They had a problem with this field yesterday. NFL, y'all need to come on.
Yeah, Ground School made a nice adjustment right there.
Yes.
Ravens, Eagles. Fresh out of retirement, Josh McCown shows he can still drop dimes. Nice ball.
That's why they gave him that guaranteed money, man.
Oh, yeah.
Josh McCown, with 2.5 guaranteed, could earn up to over $5 million.
Been there a week already throwing touchdown passes in the game. I mean, it's impressive.
I'm not even looking at him right here, but I can tell you he's got a nice haircut. He keep a fresh haircut.
Next, Jags, Dolphins. Terrell Pryor Sr. stretches out. One-handed grab.
Yeah, they don't have any big-body receivers down there in Jacksonville. Tom Coughlin, they're looking for a guy that can be that possession receiver, a matchup nightmare outside of the numbers. Maybe Terrell Pryor can hang on to that job. He's had some hamstring injuries, though, so we'll see what happens.
I'm glad y'all showed me that highlight. I didn't know where he was.
Lastly, Bengals, Giants.
You ain't right.
Damian Willis with a great catch despite the pass interference from Janoris Jenkins.
Oh, no. We don't want pass interference because they don't give you credit for the catch on that one. As a wide receiver, you got to get real selfish. Well, you don't have to. You're a wide receiver. You wake up selfish. Wow. Got to have that catch there.
At least you'll admit it.
The coach always talking about, don't worry, we got pass interference. No, that don't count for my stats. That's on the team stats.
All right, on to the Cowboys, who have made the latest move in negotiations with Ezekiel Elliott. Dallas has reportedly made an offer to Zeke that would make him the second highest running back behind Todd Gurley. Broussard, what do you think? Should Zeke take this deal?
No, he should not. Because, look, Jerry Jones is willing to play the game of chicken and go into the regular season. I believe he is. The first or second game of the regular season and see how we're looking. I think Zeke should be ready to play that game too. I don't think the Cowboys are going to lower this offer. So let's say they start the first two games without him and they struggle, they look bad, or even if they win and they got no rushing game. Now you get more and more desperate to bring Zeke back, and I think this offer that makes him the second highest paid goes at least to where Todd Gurley's numbers are, if not higher. So I think Zeke gains leverage. But let's say they start off well, they win the first few games, and Tony Pollard rushes for 100 yards in one of them, and they look really good. I still don't think Dallas lowers the offer, because they still understand even if Pollard looks good, he's not an every down back like Zeke is. He averaged fewer than 6 yards a carry last year at Memphis in college. So he's going to wear down if you have to play him too much. So I think they would still, at the very least, make this offer to Zeke, keep it on the table, and he could take this. So I don't think he has anything to lose by waiting a bit. And I think he has everything to gain if it works out in his favor.
Yeah, Chris, I'm right there with you. I don't think Ezekiel Elliott should accept this offer. When I heard it, that they're putting something on the table to make him one of the top two highest paid, well, the only reason they phrase it like that is because he's not going to be the highest paid. But I said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't believe Ezekiel Elliott is coming back to work until he is the highest paid running back in the National Football League. Last year, the Rams took care of Todd Gurley 2 years before they had to. They gave him a contract extension, made him the highest paid player at the position, $14 million per. I think Ezekiel Elliott is looking at that as the benchmark that he's got to clear, because when you're in the conversation for the best at your position, it's usually the next guy up to get paid the most. So, I mean, I'm looking at this for Ezekiel Elliott. He's got to hold strong in his position and understand once we start playing meaningful games, leverage will start to shift to him. I don't like how this situation has unfolded because it's created a little bit of a soap opera around a team that has championship aspirations. But I understand both sides. I understand they have different objectives, what they're trying to get accomplished. But ultimately, I do believe that Ezekiel Elliott will be back playing for the Dallas Cowboys with a contract making him the highest paid running back.
Yeah, Zeke can't sign that deal where he's the second highest paid running back because that doesn't kick in for 2 more years. By that time, how do we know? Now, I don't think someone will pass it until Barkley. When Barkley, his contract is up with the Giants, or when he has the option there, that's when the Giants, I believe, he'll be potentially the first $20 million running back. All right, he's got 3 more years after having a sensational rookie season. And the reason why, because the present day value. You can't sign to be the second highest paid when Gurley, because L. Bell was a free agent. If L. Bell had went over Todd Gurley as a free agent and reset the market, compared to Todd Gurley was never a free agent. He never even had the chance to hit the market, and he's the highest paid. So Zeke, he has to reset the market. He's got to do it for his running backs, for all the running backs. Because when you are playing in the league, you are expecting. When I was playing in the league, I was expecting Jerry Rice to be the highest paid. And when he wasn't, I was expecting him to go in to get his contract because it affects everyone else in the league. So I know a lot of guys don't think about it that way, but when you are the guy, you have, just like Aaron Rodgers, he had to. Russell Wilson, he had to, because it makes it better for everyone else in the league. Zeke should reset the market, and I believe he's going to have to play this season to be able to do that. I don't believe that Jerry is going to succumb to his demand, especially before the season starts. Zeke is the best player on the Cowboys. The dilemma is they don't want to pay him until next year, which I can understand. Zeke, every time he goes out there, though, he's at risk of losing it all. So I can understand why he wouldn't want to play until he gets a new deal.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, if he has to reset the market, what do you think is going to happen then? If they, let's say they win the first 2 games without him, and he's still like, I got to reset the market, and they're not offering it. Well, how do you think this would play out in that regard?
Well, in the worst situation, until week number 10 or 11, until he knows he can't be a free agent. Right. He's not going to lose his year of service. Yep. So then it becomes just an ugly situation. How much does Zeke want to play with this team compared to Jerry with Dak? Because by that time, there's going to be less money available. Mm-hmm. I believe Dak is going to get $34 million.
Right.
Yes.
All right? He had the Carson Wentz 32 number in there and going to put some inflation on that. So it's an ugly situation that's going to get uglier once we start the season.
Yeah, if Zeke doesn't hold firm in his stance, then he does have to come back. I think it's before week 10 or the contract will ultimately toll, and the Cowboys will still control his rights for 2 seasons after 2019. So if they don't get something worked out in a contract extension, I mean, he's going to have to eventually come back. But my thing is this, when you start talking about the running back position, you realize it's such a short shelf life, and you don't have a long period of time to have maximum leverage. To me, this is the perfect storm for Zeke. He led the league 2 of the first 3 years he's been in rushing. In 2 of the first 3 years he's been in the league. So right now, he's got maximum leverage. He's one of the premier running backs that the league has. So I can understand why he's doing it, because he understands his importance to that team. But I don't know that making it public this way is going to
on the Cowboys
incentivize Jerry Jones to get this done. That's the problem that we have right now. I think the optics of the situation is making it a little more complicated than it probably had to be.
Yeah, I mean, with that being said, this is a team that's trying to contend for a Super Bowl title. So at any point, is there concern that there will be ill will between the two sides, that all of a sudden a circumstance of which Jerry Jones has always backed Ezekiel Elliott and seemingly they've had a very tight relationship, that this could affect the team or anything that's happening on the field?
I mean, it's always a possibility, but I do think once he gets paid, even if it's not, I think the Todd Gurley contract, at least in front offices, is working against Zeke and the other running backs.
There's no doubt.
Right? Because first of all, they didn't have to give it to him that early. Like you said, he wasn't about to hold out or anything. They just, out of the kindness of their hearts, gave him this great deal. And now for the next 4 years, it's looking like, I mean, he looks like damaged goods. David Johnson, same thing.
Yes.
That contract is working against the other running back. So I don't know that they're obviously going to keep increasing over time. But I don't think anyone right now is willing to reset the market. Like Le'Veon Bell didn't get as good a contract as he's got. It wasn't what he was expecting and hoping for.
And he didn't get as many people to get in the bidding. The Colts didn't get involved like he thought. So the Jets were able to get him at a good price. To me, the leverage with Zeke, it does start once the season. But if there's a compromise, if I'm Zeke and I can't reset the market, I realize that Jerry is maybe not going to go there, I go for the guarantees, man. I go for the Kirk Cousins, man. Give me more in the guarantees. I'm a running back. It's the most fragile position. So if Zeke can go with the guarantees, I'm willing to take less, a yearly average. If I can get my guarantees way up, I think that's the ultimate compromise to be able to get Zeke to come play football, even if he can't reach that Todd Gurley number, because securing that if he goes out there over the next 2 years, that you don't have to worry about injury. I think that's the way you get especially a running back, to be able to sign on a deal that's less than market value.
No, that's the only way it would ultimately end up getting done. But here's the thing. At the end of the deal, whenever Zeke signs a contract, it's probably going to be a bad deal. But Jerry Jones is signing it with the hopes of his team being able to compete for a championship the next 2 to 3 seasons. That's why you're doing the deal. I mean, the Rams knew when they gave Todd Gurley that contract last year that at the end of that deal, 6 years down the road, it was probably going to be a bad deal. They understood that, but they also recognized we have a championship window because we have a quarterback that's still on a rookie deal. While we can keep all of these players together, we're going to try to go for it. I believe the Dallas Cowboys are in a similar situation. I just think the two organizations are handling it differently.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago, I saw Jerry Jones and Emmitt Smith having cocktails together at the Hall of Fame. So I think that relationship is all right. I think if Zeke, if he does what he's supposed to do, you bring a championship to Big D, he going to be riding with Jerry, man, the rest of his life. Jerry going to take care of him just the way he does the rest of his the guys there in Dallas.
All right, sounds good. Coming up, should the Giants bench Eli for Daniel Jones? That's next on First Things First.
A haymaker,
Hey,
right?
Man, is that your question?
No, it's not my question.
Hey, this is Nick Wright from First Things First, and you have to check out this website, Pristine.com. Pristine Auction has daily auctions with $1 starting bids. Authenticity is important to Pristine Auction. Pristine Auction guarantees authenticity, and it comes with authentication from the most trusted sources. Pristine Auctions are affordable. Most people don't think they can afford this stuff, but it's much more affordable than you think. A Dick Butkus signed Bears jersey sold for just $56, and a Mike Tyson autographed boxing glove sold for under $100. It's quick and free to register. Bidding is free, and you only pay if you win. Use registration code FTF when joining Pristine.com, and new users will receive a $5 auction credit. Again, you'll get a $5 auction credit when using registration code FTF to sign up for Pristine.com. That's Pristine.com.
It's time for some stories to start your morning. Last night, the 2015 NFL MVP took the field for the first time since December 17th of last year. The return did not end as hoped, with Cam suffering a left foot sprain. Newton left the stadium in that walking boot. So, Canty, how big of a deal is this injury for Cam and the Panthers?
No, that's a big deal. I mean, everybody came into this game wanting to see Cam's new throwing motion and see if he would stay with it. But, I mean, the defensive line for the New England Patriots was trying to check his footwork because the guy was scrambling for his life. Now he's got a lower leg injury, and now we're questioning what he's going to be like at the start of the season. I mean, they've got a quick turnaround after week 1. They play a Thursday night game. So you have to be concerned about that Panthers pass protection because Cam Newton hasn't been healthy the last several years, and it didn't look like that offensive line was in shape to keep him upright for this coming season.
Yeah, all I've been hearing about is the improvement of the offensive line, ranked 10th now, Pro Football Focus, and I didn't see it last night. I'm sorry, neither did Cam. 2 sacks in 3 possessions.
Former Ohio State quarterback and 15th overall pick Dwayne Haskins was impressive last night in his 3rd preseason game. Haskins led Washington on 3 scoring drives in the second half. So, see, what did you make of Haskins' performance last night?
You can see the steady improvement. Week number 1, he gets off to a tough start, throws a couple interceptions, bad reads, and some defenders made good plays on it. Last week, you could see the improvement in this week. Much more confident. Ball coming out, 1, 2, 3, let it go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First guy not there. Getting to the secondary guy, just not because there was a chance to make some mistakes. He was scrambling in the pocket, was able to get rid of the football. So you could see that the speed of the game, it started to slow down for him. I'm telling you, this kid is the best thrower in the history of Ohio State. And they've been playing football there 120 years.
I was impressed by his ability to be able to shape throws. That back shoulder to Kelvin Harmon, that's a big-time throw. I mean, you see veteran quarterbacks making that throw. I mean, Dwayne Haskins has shown when he has time, he can deliver the football downfield. It's going to be a learning curve. We all knew he wasn't a finished product out of Ohio State, but the future is bright for that kid.
On to Nick Foles, the Super Bowl MVP, played in his first game as a member of the Jaguars. He completed 6 passes for 48 yards with 1 touchdown and a pick. Broussard, how good can the Jaguars be with Foles under center?
Man, they're in a tough division, but they can be very good. We know what the defense is, and I thought even the defensive struggles last year, I thought a lot of that was related to Blake Bortles. It's got to deflate your defense when you see your quarterback making those types of mistakes. So I thought that was a problem. Look, Nick Foles, take away the Jeff Fisher year, all right? And Nick Foles is 21-6 as a starter since his rookie season. That's the same team that Carson Wentz has played with and didn't win as many games as a starter. So I think Nick Foles and the Jaguars are in for a very strong year.
Their defense got to bounce back to be able to help him, but they've improved at the position. They don't have the most explosive group of wide receivers. Actually, they're in the bottom 4 teams as far as least number of weapons or threats down the field at Nick Foles. I like Nick Foles, but listen, man, buyer beware. Okay, this is not the Philly roster that he won the Super Bowl with. So anxious to see them play. If they're a 500 team, that would be a good season for the Jags.
Moving on to the man who lost to Foles in that Super Bowl 2 seasons ago. Tom Brady saw his first live game action last night against the Panthers. He looked sharp on the field and off, completing 8 of 12 passes for 75 yards on 3 drives. He also showed off his running ability with a nice 3-yard run. Here's Brady on that scramble.
To get a first down conversion on me scrambling, I'm sure the defense coordinator is like, what the heck? This is not, we got to stop Edelman. We got to stop White. We got to stop the run game. We got to stop, these great players. And all of a sudden, Brady for a scramble, that's got to piss him off pretty good. So I revel in that. And hopefully I can do that, once a game. I think I'd be good with that. And if they give me the opportunity, I'll take it. It's just, I don't think it'd be much more than 4 or 5 yards.
See, aside from that nice rush aside, what did you see out of Brady last night?
They're professional. They had a game plan of what they wanted to try to accomplish. They wanted to spread the ball around. You could see him trying to get the tight ends involved, getting the backs out of the backfield, even driving the ball deep down the field outside, compared to Arizona and Cliff Kingsbury. Oh, no, we're not going to show anything. There's a reason why. They've been to 9 Super Bowls. This is the dress rehearsal. Not only do we have a defensive game plan where we're going to get after Cam Newton, we're going to blitz him some, we're going to give him some different looks, but as far as how we're going to develop as an offense, this will be a top 5 scoring offense, even though they don't have Josh Gordon right now, even though they don't have Demaryius Thomas. So they're going, if he makes the team, because it's still up in the air if he's going to make the team there. So for me, I got such great respect because they respect the game. They're the best coached organization in the history of sports, and you could see it last night. Offensive line protections, 3-step, 5-step. Tom has time. He runs out of the pocket. We don't ever want to see that, but he understands. I'm going to get down after getting the first down. They are professional as it gets, and don't believe the lack of weapons is going to hold New England back. If you're watching the NFL, they should be your Super Bowl favorite if you've been watching the last 10 years.
No, and watching that game last night, it was clear to me that there were certain things that the Patriots wanted to work on, both offensively and defensively. We mentioned some of the things about the defensive front, but offensively, they showed that they wanted to work on that running game. A lot of leads with James Dedlin clearing the hole for Sony Michel. They had the benefit, they had the problem with a couple of bad breaks. They didn't get the benefit of the doubt on certain calls, but even when that offense got behind schedule, you saw Tom Brady be able to make plays, targeting Philip Dorsett on get it back downs, and then being able to convert on 3rd downs for 1st downs and being able to keep the sticks moving. That, to me, is the impressive part about this Patriots offense. They can do it a lot of different ways, and then when you have somebody as smart as Tom Brady as your quarterback, he's always going to put that team in good situations. You saw that last night. That offense that thing morphed at the end of last year and became a bully offense. And so I think they're still incorporating some of that, but now they want to get the wide receivers and tight ends involved in it. Ryan Izzo did a great job last night. Brady's going to try to develop that guy along with having Ben Watson, but that offense looked good last night.
Yeah, maybe I overstate, toward the end of last season how his arm didn't look as strong. Because I hear it every day from notorious Tom Brady hater Rob Parker on our radio show. All right? But Brady, it's preseason, but his arm looked good. That throw he made to Izzo and it's inside the 10, that was right there. So he looked great. And you said it, Chris, they didn't have all their offensive weapons on the outside that they hoped to have. Harry, Josh Gordon. Edelman didn't play, and we've seen him do it time and time again with guys that are kind of nameless and nondescript. If he gets those guys and they're healthy, then you add the running game that they highlighted last night, that offense is really going to be strong.
One thing that people might have missed from last season, and your body does get worn down as you go through the season, but Tom Brady and Drew Brees both went through the same thing. And I think it's more what you said. It's more of defenses started we're taking away Michael Thomas. I'm taking away Brady's weapons. And the offensive line of New England was a lot better running the ball than they were at pass protection. So their stats suffered, but I believe it had a lot to do with the defense and the lack of weapons. Josh Gordon was gone. Michael Thomas, there was no one opposite of him. So their numbers started getting deflated after week number 12. But I think it had a lot to do with those defenses and the scheme.
I'm Sarah Kustak, and before the show moves along, here's a quick word from our friends over at the Fantasy Footballers podcast. The NFL season is back, and that means one thing. It's fantasy football time. Dominate your league by subscribing to the #1 fantasy football podcast on the planet, the Fantasy Footballers. Fantasy Footballers podcast is the most downloaded fantasy football podcast for a reason. It has the most accurate rankings as measured by Fantasy Pros, so you have a leg up on your competition. The Fantasy Footballers was the winner of iHeartRadio's Best Sports Podcast and have over 20 industry awards since 2015. Simply put, these guys can help you win your league, and you'll be entertained in the process. Subscribe right now to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever you listen to podcasts. You can also visit them on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com. Subscribe now and dominate your fantasy football league. All right, let's move on to the Giants, who have said multiple times that they plan to bring along Duke rookie quarterback Daniel Jones slowly. However, his play in the preseason may cause them to think differently. Last night, he was an efficient 9 of 11 for 141 yards and led a touchdown drive against the Bengals. He's now completed over 83% of his passes this preseason, and head coach Pat Shurmur isn't surprised.
That's what we saw when we drafted him. So I think he just has a feel for playing the position, and he's getting, he's steadily getting better every time he takes the field, whether it's practice or games. And so that's what you're looking for from a young player, and certainly a guy as talented as Daniel is.
It may be hot take time. Canty, let's weigh in on your former team. Should Daniel Jones start week 1 over Eli Manning?
No. Daniel Jones shouldn't start week 1. I'm not going to put that hot take out there. They've got Eli Manning as a starting quarterback for a reason. And plus, they decided to carry that $23 million cap charge that he had throughout the entire offseason. So from a business standpoint, the move doesn't make a lot of sense. But in terms of the handoff from the veteran quarterback to the rookie, it's hard to start a rookie quarterback, and then if he goes out there and struggle, justify coming back in with Eli Manning. Now, if the team gets off to a rough start with Eli Manning, the 16-year vet, fans would be excited when you turn it over to Daniel Jones because now you're building toward the future. And I'll say it before, I'll say it again. Daniel Jones is the future of the New York Giants, and that's what the 2019 season is all about, putting that kid in the best situations so he can develop and realize his full potential. I do believe there's a benefit for Daniel Jones to start the season on the bench and actually learn from Eli Manning, seeing what it takes as a starting quarterback to be able to go through your preparation week in, week out, seeing him make adjustments on the sideline without having the pressure of having to go out there in the game and execute. So I like what I've seen from Daniel Jones. CC, I told you I'm rooting for him. You know he went to my high school.
Yes.
I want nothing but good things for him. But I think, in part, trying to create the best situation for him, he needs to start the regular season on the bench.
I'm totally with you, Chris. Look, because of who Eli Manning is and what he's done, because of what John Mara has said, that he hopes he plays the entire season and Jones on the bench, you're just inviting controversy if you start Daniel Jones now. Even though as great as he looks, because he's going to have his struggles. He's going to have his bad games as a rookie. And once that begins to happen, there would begin to be this, well, do we put Eli back in? And it just becomes a controversy. Whereas if you start Eli, look, if their first game we know is Dallas. Then you got Buffalo, Tampa Bay, and Washington. 3 games you feel you should be competitive in. If they're not competitive, if they lose all those games, then the fans will be clamoring for Daniel Jones to come in and play. It won't be anything like when they benched Eli a few years ago. It'll be, fans wanting to see Daniel Jones, and I'm with you in that. Just like, look, Pat Mahomes sat a whole year, essentially, and he learned under Alex Smith. I think Andy Reid and company saw that Mahomes may have even been better than Smith that year. But he learned from him, and I think the same thing can happen with Jones. Remember, the first 4 games, too, Golden Tate's not going to be there. So you want to put this guy in the best position possible to succeed, and when Golden Tate's not there, that's not that position.
Well, for one, the reality is Eli, they've had 5 out of 6 losing season. 5 out of 6. There's no other quarterback in the league that has that. Now, as far as what the coach is saying, hey, coach, he didn't throw the ball like that in college. All right? They didn't run that type of offense. We didn't see him making those types of throws. So saying that that's the guy that we saw, he wouldn't have been there at 6. All right? He wouldn't have been there at 6 if he was that good. They would have won more games, too, at Duke. So this is what I've learned in evaluating players. It's my 18th year doing television, covering the NFL and other sports. Regardless of what you see in college, regardless of the fixation you have on the draft, you have to give kids a new chance when they get into the NBA or in the NFL. Zion, regardless of what you saw at Duke, when he gets to the NBA, you got to let that go because you have to give him an opportunity. And if you loved him, you're going to probably like him in the NBA, but you got to give him an opportunity to develop. I didn't like Daniel Jones. I didn't like the draft pick. I thought Haskins was better. But for me to be an analyst, I got to give this kid a fair chance in evaluating. So even though I didn't like the pick, I love what I've seen. You can see he can throw the ball. He makes good reads. He's got composure. The best play he made of the night was his left tackle, Nate Solder, breaks down. He gets hit upside the head on an incompletion. They end up calling a timeout because they were getting ready to burn the clock. They come back the next play. He throws a touchdown pass. They got a 3-by-1, got 3 receivers to the left, got the tight end in tight for protection. He picks out the single coverage and takes a knife to him. So for me, that's the kind of quarterback that I want. Not only the skill, but I just got hit upside the head. When is he going to get back to being aggressive? And that next play, that spoke volumes to me because in this game, I know that quarterback and the kickers, them the only ones on the field don't want to be hit. And most of them, they change when you hit them, especially from the blind side. So for me, that was a significant play that he's made. I've been very, very impressed. The Giants, they got it right. The general manager, for all those, y'all can start apologizing now. To the coach, apologize now because the kid is a quality thrower of the football.
Canty, you mentioned it's going to be good for Daniel Jones to learn from Eli. You shared the field with Eli. Take us inside the locker room, the sideline, the practice field. How do you feel like Eli will be approaching this as the season continues, heading into week 1 this preseason, but as the season continues?
Well, Eli is a consummate professional, right? And so you know that he's always going to do his due diligence in terms of his preparation. I have no doubt that Eli Manning put a lot into this offseason. You've heard reports about how he's in the best shape of his career, how he's working with a new trainer and working with some different things with his diet to try to put himself in the best position to be competitive and play really good football this season. You saw it last night in the preseason game. They executed a zone read play, and then Eli Manning is out in front blocking for the running back. I mean, how often do you see Eli Manning as the lead blocker for somebody running the football? You never see it, but I think that's because you got a little bit of competition behind you right now, and you know that Daniel Jones at some point is going to be the future for the Giants at the quarterback position. Eli Manning is trying to push that off as far as he can, but the reality is that this team took this kid with a top 10 pick for a reason, and that Eli Manning at some point is going to have to relinquish it. I don't know if it'll be after 9 games like what happened with him and Kurt Warner back in 2004, but at some point this season, we will see Daniel Jones as the starting quarterback. Now, CeCe, you talked about Pat Shurmur and him trying to posture and maybe suggesting when that will be or when it won't be. I don't believe that that will be a Pat Shurmur decision. I think that that is an ownership decision with Dave Gettleman in terms of when they are going to play Daniel Jones. They will consult Pat Shurmur in terms of where they think Daniel Jones is at with his development, but in terms of the decision on when they're going to make the handoff between Easy and Daniel Jones, that is above Pat Shurmur's pay grade.
Do you like that? I think it should be Shurmur's decision.
Well, the New York Giants, they've run it, and I respect the family. And I believe that the family, because the way it's been run, and I respect that in the relationship with Eli in 2 Super Bowls, they should have a say in it. But ultimately, though, man, you draft a kid that high, that kid is going to play, regardless what Eli. Eli, we need to give him more credit for being the competitor. He was the quarterback that defeated the undefeated, the unbeatable New England Patriots. And he did win another Super Bowl. So inside, he doesn't have the disposition. But inside, he's a competitor, and he is not wanting to relinquish that. He wants to start this season and then potentially play somewhere else next year.
Yeah. All right, sounds good. Coming up, should Zeke be offended by the Cowboys' latest offer? That's ahead on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First, and we're talking to Sean Watson. On Saturday, the Texans will face off against the Cowboys in Jerry's World, and Watson is using this matchup as a measuring stick for his squad.
Another opportunity to see, where we stand as an offense, but as a team too, and just kind of, getting ready for the real action coming up in a couple weeks, and just trying to make sure that I'm staying, prepared for this game and staying in tune and. Making sure that everyone is on the same page, building chemistry.
See, are the Texans a legitimate Super Bowl contender?
No. I believe Deshaun Watson's underrated. They got a lot of top-flight talent. They got a lot of players that you really love, but no, I don't believe that they have the overall chemistry that it would take. They don't match up against the best teams. They're terrorized in New England. New England, anytime they play them, they take them to school. So if you're in the AFC, you don't match up against New England well, and you have an offensive line that has as many question marks as far as their offensive line does, they haven't spent the resources on that offensive line, no. Last year, with him being sacked 62 times, you got to go back to 2006, John Kitna and the 3-13 Lions, where someone was sacked more than one of the most athletic quarterbacks we have. Man, you would forget that, like how athletic Deshaun Watson is, and he got sacked 62 times. So, no, offensive line is not good enough. To me, Clowney is not healthy enough. Their defense on the back end, their corners, question marks as far as giving up a lot of big plays when they get in big games. So, no, a lot of talent. I like some of the players. I love Nuke, the receiver. Him and D. Watson, they got a mean combination. DeAndre, he has second-best hands in the league besides Larry Fitzgerald. I'm a little partial to Larry, but as soon as Larry retires, he's going to take over that title. So they are talented, like 28 other teams in the league, but Super Bowl, they might be a year or two, and they need to hire a general manager. And I don't even know if this is the right coach for them if we're talking about the real Super Bowl. We're trying to keep it 100, Canty.
Yeah, it's an organization that's in flux. They don't have a general manager. They're dealing with the public holdout of Jadeveon Clowney. So there are a lot of moving parts. And in the middle of it, you have a transcendent talent like Deshaun Watson, and the organization hasn't done a great job of trying to protect him. You talked about him getting sacked 62 times. And last year was a situation where he had a partially collapsed lung, and he had to take the bus to a road game because he couldn't fly with the team. That's the situation that they put him in. But then you're still talking about a quarterback that's willing to go out there with his health compromised to try to help his team. And listening to him earlier this week talk about the preseason, he said, yeah, I want to have the opportunity to play. I want the reps because it presents another opportunity for me to learn, another opportunity for me to compete. You want your quarterback to have that type of attitude. Deshaun Watson has the physical abilities, and he's got all the intangibles with it. I understand why Dabo Swinney, his college coach, said he's like the Michael Jordan of football. because he is a special, special talent. But the Texans as an organization have got to do a better job of protecting him. They spent a high draft pick on Titus Howard, a kid that played FCS football. We'll see how they work him in there. They brought in Chantrell Henderson, CC, I know you know him. Matt Khalil, an offensive tackle. This is going to be a makeshift group with the offensive line up front. We'll see how quickly they can gel, because they're going to protect what's the most important thing for that franchise, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I thought I might be in a minority in this because I don't see him as a contender. I'll use another NBA comparison. You mentioned they're frightened by New England. It's like Toronto a few years ago and Cleveland.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
That's what it's like.
No matter what they're doing.
Right. When they face New England, and they're pretty on paper. Because defensively up front, you know, they look great. They stop the run. They got a pretty good running game. You know, Lamar Miller, you mentioned DeAndre Hopkins, and Watson, I agree, underrated. But because that O-line doesn't protect him, you're not able to see him be his best self. And until that's the case, they're not going to be a contender. Maybe they win the division. I like Indy if Andrew Luck's healthy. If Luck's not healthy, I do like Jacksonville a little better than UCC. I think they will contend for that title. But maybe Houston wins the division. But as far as getting to the Super Bowl, I give them no shot.
Then with all the concerns about the offensive line, despite what type of talent Deshaun Watson is, what are realistic expectations for what you may see out of him this season?
Same thing we expect out of Cam Newton. When Cam Newton was MVP of the league, he didn't have a great offensive line. They played well that season. They did a lot of other good things around him, but he has that type of talent. He's an unusual leader. You could see that when he took Clemson and took them from when they were old Clemson to when they faced Alabama twice. He's the best player on that field. There's a lot of pros on that field. And Nick Saban, the respect that he had for him and the way he talked about him. I've talked to some of his teammates, his overall leadership. He is a guy just like Brady, just like Drew Brees. He's the first one there. His teammates respect him more than anyone in the building. So I expect him to be in the conversations for the MVP because he's a force multiplier. When Mangini's here and sitting in these seats, he talks about a guy who doesn't necessarily need all the talent around him. And that's what Deshaun has been able to do since he's been in the league as a starter. Phenomenal decision maker, can throw the ball deep, has great touch, great leadership understands situational football. So the sky is actually the limit. People use that often. But for him, he is that type of talent. Him, Baker Mayfield, Luck, they're special quarterbacks. The only reason why he's not in the top 15 is because we have that many good quarterbacks playing in the league, and I believe that rating that he has at Pro Football Focus, I think was 16, has him underrated.
All right, well, it's getting hot in Houston, even hotter in Dallas. Coming up, wait until you hear the shot that Stephen Jones sent at Zeke. That's next on First Things First. Cowboys opened training camp up almost a month ago on July 27th, and the team is still without Zeke, who is in Cabo training. Now, negotiations with the two sides have been contentious recently. Stephen Jones had some strong statements about dealing with agents to The Athletic, saying, quote, I have a lot of respect for most agents. I really do. I think they're trying to do their job for these players, but I do think sometimes they don't have the same end game that maybe the players should and we do. I think sometimes our players have to realize that their representatives don't always have what's in their best interest. Getting the very most they can for the players may not be in the interest of their long-term future if they want to. And I'm totally convicted, all of our players do want to win championships and keep these young players right now. I don't think the representatives, and they're all good ones, feel like that's their problem. So, Broussard, what do you make of those comments? A lot to unpack there.
Yeah, well, I think he's trying to send a message to Zeke, you know, and to any player out there that they may negotiate with. But it's insulting to Zeke because the implication is that your agent is directing you and telling you exactly what to do. Whereas the truth is that your agent works for you. And I compared the NBA. Anthony Davis, everybody talks about, Rich Paul's leading him around like a puppet and sending him to the Lakers. Mm-hmm. No, Rich Paul works for Anthony Davis. If Rich Paul is trying to get him to the Lakers, it's at least in part because Anthony Davis has said, I want to go to the Lakers. Mm-hmm. All right, if he didn't want to go there, he's not trying to direct him there. So this the same thing here. Ezekiel Elliott is telling his agent what he wants to do. Now, I do agree with Stephen Jones in that the agent's job is to get you as much money as you can. And the agent is not thinking, well, can they keep Dak? Can they keep Byron Jones? Can they keep these other guys? He's thinking, let me get Ezekiel Elliott as much money as possible. And it's really big in this situation because he's a running back. With Dak Prescott, he's going to get, what, $140 million or whatever it is. Ezekiel Elliott's going to get about $40 million, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Like 50, it's not the same. So I do think Steven's right in that. The agent's job is not to think about, well, can they keep all these other guys? His job is to get my guy the most money, but don't insult the player and act like they're being led around by a string.
Well, here's the thing. I don't necessarily think that Stephen Jones is trying to insult Zeke and Rocky Arsenault, his agent. I think where that is coming from is Stephen Jones knowing how the Dallas Cowboys treat their players even after they're done. So when you start talking about long-term future, it's not just the entirety of Zeke's playing career. It's about what Zeke is going to do after football. And that's what Stephen is saying. If you're able to take a little bit less money and we're able to keep more of our talented players together, then you're going to have multiple opportunities to compete for a championship. And when you win a title in Dallas, that's legendary status. CC, you talked about all your friends that used to play for those 90s Dallas Cowboys teams and how well they're doing now with their own businesses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I think that's what Stephen Jones is referring to in this situation. That's why he's making that statement. But I understand where Zeke and his camp is coming from, too. I mean, they have a different objective. They're trying to monetize Ezekiel Elliott's athletic ability. As a player, you have a finite period of time to take advantage of your skill set. And Zeke is trying to get as much money as he possibly can because when you're in your prime, that's when you have the leverage over an organization. When running backs come into the NFL, that's their prime. That's the beginning of it. And you're only going to have 5 to 6 seasons of top-end production. So Zeke and his camp are trying to capitalize on that right now. As Ozzie Newsome, the general manager for the Baltimore Ravens, Hall of Famer, once told me, there are 53 independent contractors on a football team. And before you can go about the business of becoming a team, the players have to take care of their business situations. This holdout is about Zeke trying to take care of his business.
Yeah, Zeke and his agent, they're in a tough spot because Zeke's agent shouldn't have the same objective that Stephen Jones has. Right now, what the Dallas Cowboys are trying to do from a public standpoint, they're trying to create an atmosphere in Dallas. We got a lot of young players. If you want to come here, you're probably in your best interest to take a little less money. That's the culture right now. But they're also, Stephen saying, our guys, legendary status, the ones who do get it, you can be here for a long time. But the agent, if I'm doing the contract, I'm getting a set number based on the Players Association. That's 3%. His contract is not going to be like the quarterback, and good chance he's not getting another one.
Right.
That get ready to get 140 and could get another 140 or 150 after that. And could get another contract after that. That is the reality. Now, when it talks about the 3%, what if the agent, Rocky, what if he's not doing Zeke's marketing? Because Zeke, Stephen and them would tell him, man, you can come here, we can get you a lot of money off the field. But the agent might not be making money off the field. Off the field, the marketing deal, you're going to get 10 to 20%. So if he's getting the whole deal, yeah, it makes sense. He can work with Stephen. But if I'm only getting the 3%, hey, buddy, I can't take no discount because I'm only in it for this 3%, and I'm probably only going to get one bite at the apple. So there is a conflict here. I do like what Dallas is doing as far as the image of, I need all these guys to take less because the culture here, and we can do this in this window, maybe 3 to 5 years, and try to win us a championship.
What impact does this have that this negotiation, all this back and forth, is playing out in the media, in public?
Well, look, I think this is how negotiations are. It looks ugly while you're negotiating, but like Cris said earlier, when Zeke gets his contract, I think he'll be fine. Even if it's not quite what he wanted. At the end of the day, he does have individual goals. He does want to be a Hall of Famer. He does want to win a Super Bowl. He does want to be the best running back in the league. So even if he's getting a little less than he expected, I still think he comes back and he plays great football, unless it's just a completely insulting offer, which I don't even think he'd accept. So I think this will be fine. What is interesting, Cris, you're right. You talked about guys taking less. Jalen Smith, we saw him take less. I don't hear anybody talking about Dak taking less. And I don't even hear Jerry implying that Dak should take less. He's talking about he should be a top-tier paid quarterback, even though we know he's not a top-tier quarterback. So you want Zeke. Zeke is better than Dak, but he's going to get half the money. What about Dak taking, instead of 34, 32?
Well, the thing about we don't know that, but he's going to have to answer that from moving forward. All right? The kid wasn't drafted in the first round, didn't get one of those big contracts, took Tony Romo's job. He deserves to get paid. He shouldn't take no haircut. Like, I wouldn't take no haircut. I wouldn't, man, listen, I don't care nothing about Zeke and them. Look, when we drafted Randy Moss, I'm going to tell you the truth. Dennis Green told me and said, man, we're going to get the kid at 21. I was like, there's no way. He's the best kid on everyone's board if he's on the board. A lot of people had taken him off the board. We get him at 21. I talked to Moss. We're going to come to Florida. We're going to start training. Man, I called the general manager and told him flat out, ain't no way I'm coming to Minnesota, not putting a step in there. In the state of Minnesota, 10,000 Lakes, I won't be there until I get my contract redone. Break me off. I want 4 years, want 3 of it guaranteed. I ain't coming there. I ain't going to say nothing. I'm going to train the kid, but I be damned if I put all this information into this dude 6'4", run 4 threes all day, and he getting ready to take my spot. No sirree. No sirree, man. Give me mine before I train this guy. Right. And it happened.
Well, just to put a bow on it, I think that players in the NFL recognize that the quarterback is just a little bit different than everybody else. So in terms of how Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones handle that negotiation, I think Zeke and his camp are realistic with things. They know that Dak is going to be different. But when you're trying to set a culture in terms of how you want to do business moving forward, I do believe how Jerry Jones handles this Ezekiel Elliott situation will have implications with the other contracts that they're going to try to take care of. You're talking about Jalen Smith already getting done, but you're going to have to deal with Byron Jones. You're going to have to deal with Amari Cooper in the offseason, so on and so forth. So I think that when you look at that, when your best player is taking a little bit less, it makes it easier for Jerry to go to the other guys and say, you guys need to take a little bit less because we're trying to keep this whole thing together. Tom Brady in New England, they've been doing it for years. It's hard to go into Bill Belichick's office if you're a position player and say, you know what, I want top-of-the-market money when TB12 ain't getting top-of-the-market money. So there are going to be more implications that are affected by how Jerry and Zeke take care of this business.
That's an excellent point. All right, coming up, let's stay in the NFC East. Should rookie Dwayne Haskins start week 1 for Washington? We'll discuss that next on First Things First. We'll get to Dwayne Haskins in a second, but first, Raiders, Packers in Winnipeg. Keelan Doss makes the adjustment. Nice toe tap for the catch.
Great back shoulder throw here by the quarterback. Defensive back, when he gets ahead of the DB on press outside, quarterback sees his numbers, throws it at the back of his numbers. Wide receiver makes a great adjustment there.
Ravens, Eagles, fresh out of retirement. Josh McCown shows he can still drop dimes.
He wasn't the only one last night, though. Trace McSorley for the Baltimore Ravens was lighting it up.
He was.
Really impressed to see him throwing the football and having that much success.
I hope we don't have to see Josh this year, because that means my man Wentz is hurt.
All right, lastly, Bengals, Giants, Damian Willis. Great catch, despite the pass interference from Janoris Jenkins.
No, don't want pass interference. Quarterback underthrew him a little bit. He was running a route against cover 2 up the sideline. Janoris Jenkins couldn't get his head back. PI. We don't want PI, though. We want that catch there, can't he?
That's what I'm trying to see.
Wide receivers,
make a play. Make a play, man. Let's go.
Nice. On to Dwayne Haskins now. Last night, he played in his 3rd preseason game and led 3 scoring drives in the second half. However, he is still behind Case Keenum in the quarterback battle. Here's what Haskins had to say after last night's game.
You know, at a house, I didn't play initially right away, and I was always, being encouraging not only to the quarterback, to the rest of the team. And it's because I'm not starting right now doesn't mean I can't, like you said, be a great teammate, be a great leader. Whatever that situation is, I want to start. Whether I do or not, that's not up to me. It's for the coaches. But I'm just going to keep making it hard, keep getting better every day, and let it take care of itself.
See, Haskins has looked a little bit better each and every game this preseason. What have you thought of his progression?
And the other quarterbacks, they should be ahead of him. Case should be ahead of him. He should be. Colt McCoy should be ahead of him. These guys have started games in the NFL. They've been with multiple NFL franchises. So you have seen him make the adjustment. Made some mistakes by putting the ball in the defenses where they can get their hands on it. In the first game, 2 interceptions there. One, he made a bad read. The linebacker made a nice interception on it. The other one, he overthrew a guy into a seam, and the cornerback makes an interception. But you can see, he can throw the football. He's got a big-time arm. He looks like an NFL quarterback, but he's still, even what we knew at Ohio State, he's still a very, very young passer, and he's only going to get better. But you can see he's making adjustments, getting the ball out of his hands, allowing his playmakers. But if you give him protection and you run a route deep down the field, he will knife you because he will throw it down the field. So that part has been impressive. I think that Jay Gruden is underrated, especially as a quarterback developer. We always talk about John Gruden as a quarterback developer. He hadn't developed any quarterbacks. Jay has. And look at his quarterback stats year in and year out. If their wide receivers can make enough plays, watch, they got an injury last night. Their number 1 receiver in tight end, Jordan Reed, he was hurt in last night's game. But if they're outside, they can get some productivity. I think Haskins, once he is the starter, because he might not start the season, but I believe he starts 10, 12 games for the Redskins this year. Excited to see his overall development.
Yeah, I think he ends up starting a good number of games in his rookie year. And with young quarterbacks, you know that they're going to struggle. There's a huge learning curve when going from college to pro, especially at that position, because there's just so much more information that they're being asked to process in real time. I mean, the quarterback, he's got to understand everything that his guys are doing, but he's also got to understand what the defense is doing and make sure that everybody is on the same page. That takes some time. But as an organization, it's your responsibility while that young quarterback is learning to try to have as much stability around him as possible. And with the Washington Redskins, that organization has been a troubled franchise in terms of all the dysfunction with the coaching staffs and the front office. Coming into this year, Jay Gruden is on the hot seat. Las Vegas released their odds for the coaches that are most likely to be fired, and Jay Gruden was at the top of that list. So right now, when you look at the situations the Redskins are in, they're trying to balance developing a young quarterback with a head coach that's trying to win to save his job. There's a conflict of interest within that, so you question whether or not Dwayne Haskins is in the best position to have success as a rookie. But overall, you saw the talent. The fact that the reports out of Washington are saying that the kid doesn't make the same mistake twice, that bodes well for him in terms of eventually becoming a guy that's not just a passenger, but somebody that can elevate the play of everybody around him.
I think what Jay's going to have to try to sell his ownership on is the development of Haskins. They're not going to win. They're not going to win enough for Jay to have some great record, right? Whether, it's Case Keenum starting or Haskins starting, they're not going to win this year. So he's going to have to sell them on, look at how I helped develop Dwayne Haskins. You said he doesn't make the same mistake twice. We saw a couple weeks ago, a week ago, when he threw the 55-yard touchdown pass against Cincinnati. And they talked about how the week earlier, he had the same play call against Cleveland, and he didn't make the pre-snap protection call. He got sacked. He made it the second week against Cincinnati, and he throws a 55-yard bomb. So I do like him. Man, he looks good in that pocket. He throws. He looks like the prototypical quarterback in the pocket. But you don't want to throw him in there too early because then you can hurt his confidence. And then you can take away even the excitement of the fans. If you throw him in there too early, it will dampen their excitement. So I think they just play it smart, let him continue to grow and develop. It's not like he's lit the world on fire in the preseason, but you like the fact that he's improving every week.
Yeah, and you mentioned, that Gruden is an underrated quarterback developer. So for Haskins, for his skill set, what are some of the specific things that you would look for in his growth when he does finally get on the field?
Well, this is what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about his overall growth because their left tackle, Trent Williams, he's out. Trent Williams said he's not going to play football for Washington. So I'm concerned with rushing him in there because the left guard happens to be Eric Flowers.
Oh, my God.
And I don't know if you guys know anything about covering football and everything, but Eric Flowers, no matter where he goes, sack tend to follow. So for me, the left tackle's out. Eric Flowers is the left guard. How am I going to be able to evaluate the quarterback when he's not getting hit? So do I adjust to that. Let's run the ball. We got Darius Geis. We got Adrian Peterson. Let's run the ball. Let's try to be physical because this quarterback has a future in the league. We don't want it to be knocked out of him by that very, very, very suspect left side of the offensive line.
Yeah, you saw that last night with Case Keenum. He got sacked, and then he was running for his life and threw a ball up. Tack McKinley picked it off. I mean, it didn't look good for him. So, yeah, that offensive line is a group that we have to be worried about. You see with the New York Giants how they're developing Daniel Jones behind their first-string offensive line. But when you look at the first-string offensive line for the Redskins, there's a lot to be desired. So I worry about them being able to protect him so that he can learn on the job when he eventually takes over as the starting quarterback.
I want to ask you guys this, because personally, I wouldn't mind seeing Haskins sit most of the year, if not all of the year. If early on, if that line is as bad as we think, and Case Keenum, if he starts and he's running for his life and he's getting sacked a ton of times, would you throw Haskins in there?
Nope.
Okay.
I throw Colt McCoy and have him run for his life. Nope. I rotate them back and forth. When they done running for their life, last 4 games of the season, last 3 games of the season, December, I put Haskins in there, get him some reps, get him ready for 2020.
Yeah, what you don't want is a situation like you had with David Carr down with the Texans where he got sacked 76 times, and they did knock the career out of him.
Right.
Yeah.
He was my former teammate with the New York Giants, and he told me about that. It's not a good situation for a young quarterback when he's not getting the protection that he needs to be able to do his job. So they've got to sit pat with Dwayne Haskins until they put an offensive line in front of him that they feel confident that can protect him.
It was nice to see Darius Geis, though, out there last night.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice little run. He's got some burst.
All right, coming up, are the Panthers' Super Bowl hopes in jeopardy with Cam's injury? We discuss next on First Things First.
That's a good question, man.
Back here on First Things First, and we're going viral. Ezekiel Elliott's agency put out this video of what looks like Zeke training in the rain in Cabo. Guys, is Zeke going to come back from Mexico in the best shape of his career?
Oh, he's going to be in good shape. Zeke also is a track runner. Set a lot of Illinois records when he was in high school, so he's got that track in his background. Also, when he got suspended, he came back from Cabo in great shape. Expect great things.
Yeah, the reports that he's at his lowest weight since his rookie year, I think that's a good sign that he's taking care of business in terms of getting himself ready to play football once the regular season gets here.
And reports are that Marshall Faulk is headed to Cabo to work out with Zeke. Get him ready.
All right, Marshall, go down there with the Buckeyes. Don't keep him focused now, Marcus. I mean, yeah.
Marshall said he was going to get him to throw up. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Just stay focused, guys.
That's what he said.
Marshall Faulk, Marcus Allen, Zeke, be careful, homie. Them dudes are dangerous. They dangerous.
Time to move on. And some stories to start your morning.
Cabo.
Last night, the 2015 NFL MVP Cam Newton took the field for the first time since December 17th of last year, though the return did not end his hope. After he suffered a left foot sprain, Newton left the stadium in a walking boot. So, Canty, how big of a deal is this injury for Cam and the Panthers?
Well, it's a big deal because we're questioning how healthy is he going to be at the regular season opener. Now, we thought the offensive line would be improved. Matt Paradis signed in free agency. Darrell Williams was coming back off an injury. He only played 1 game last year, their left tackle. They drafted Greg Little out of Ole Miss. I'm hoping that the offensive line would be better, but they didn't look better last night. So they got some things to fix, and they ain't got a whole lot of time to fix it.
Yeah, my concern, look, they're saying this is just a sprained ankle. Hopefully it's nothing too serious. But I would like to see Cam be not only play the games, because he plays. He's only missed 5 games in his 8 years in the league. But I want him to play healthy. I don't want him to be 80% banged up on a gimpy ankle or if he takes some other hit. So they do have to protect him. And for their chance, I picked him to win the division. He's got to be 100%.
Carolina could be a sleeper this year.
All right. On the other side of that same game, Tom Brady saw his first live game action of the preseason last night against the Panthers. He looked sharp, completing 8 of 12 passes for 75 yards on 3 drives. He also showed off his running ability with a nice 3-yard run. So, Broussard, what did you think of Brady's performance last night?
I thought he looked strong. I thought he made some really nice throws. Of course, he didn't have his weapons there. You know, Josh Gordon, N'Keal Harry, Julian Edelman didn't play. Their running game was strong, too. You see they're going to have a lot of rush game this year. And then if Brady's throwing it like that, another big year for the Patriots.
Yeah, even if that offense got behind schedule last night, Tom Brady would always come back and make a couple of plays to keep the sticks moving. That's probably the most impressive part to me. Also, targeting the tight ends 4 or 5 times last night. Ryan Izzo along with Ben Watson. We'll see how that group continues to develop as the regular season gets closer.
On to the last quarterback who defeated Brady in a Super Bowl, Nick Foles. The Super Bowl MVP played in his first game as a member of the Jaguars. He completed 6 passes for 48 yards with 1 touchdown and a pick. So, see, how good can the Jaguars be with Foles under center?
I think the Jags will be improved. Their quarterback is better. I'm not excited and haven't been excited about their skilled guys. I'm not in love with Fournette. He's too much of a banger. He's not able to break enough tackles in the NFL. His best football was at LSU. Let's see if he has a breakout season. And their wideouts. If you want to talk about one of the worst group of wideouts, go to Jacksonville. So Nick Foles, what he's used to, what he's seen in Philadelphia, he will not have the type of weaponry that he has seen there with the Eagles.
Yeah, I'm not excited about the weapons that he's got to work with. What I am excited about, though, is that Jacksonville Jaguars defense, because they're going to support him. They only made their strength that much stronger this offseason. They drafted Josh Allen, the defensive lineman out of Kentucky. He was getting after it last night with that Miami Dolphins offense. So I'm excited about what that defense can do this year.
Moving on to the Giants, who have said multiple times that they plan to bring along Duke rookie quarterback Daniel Jones slowly. However, his play in the preseason may cause them to think differently. Last night, he was an efficient 9 of 11 for 141 yards and led a touchdown drive against the Bengals. So, Broussard, what did you think of Jones last night?
He's been fantastic. Every time I've seen him in this preseason, he's been great. Last night, he took a big hit and came back on the next play, had a great pass. I wouldn't start him yet. Don't make up a controversy when you don't have to, okay? If they struggle with Eli early, they got some easier teams on the schedule early after Dallas. If they struggle in those games, the fans will be dying to see Daniel Jones. It'll be a smoother transition from the Eli Manning era.
You know Golden Tate's not going to be there at the beginning. You're better off with a veteran quarterback when you have one of your top weapons, if not your best wide receiver, out. Daniel Jones has been the best player in pro football through the first 3 weeks of the preseason. And regardless of what you had him evaluated at, you have to believe that Gettleman and Pat Shurmur are very, very happy with that first-round pick.
Yeah, I don't know about giving nobody nicknames like Danny Dimes in the preseason, though. You got to do something in the regular season before we start giving you nicknames.
I heard you call him that, though.
I'm just about to say. During break, we're dropping Danny Dimes. Moving on to the Steelers, where there have been a lot of good vibes this offseason, which is a nice change of events from the drama that surrounded the team in 2018. Ben Roethlisberger is entering his 16th season in the NFL. The quarterback spoke about getting his first preseason action this Sunday against the Titans underway.
I think in all the other major sports, you can get away with losing some games, and you can kind of warm up to it, if you will, because they're so long. With our season, you can't really afford to do that. So to get out there and get the actual game speed and stuff, it is definitely beneficial. I do think it's a line that you walk, though, of not doing too much for risk of injuries, whatever else may come with that. I think we're doing well. I mean, I think we can always try and improve. I'm still trying to improve myself and my game, and so we should always strive to get better and strive to be the best we can be, and that's individually and as a group and unit.
Canty, so Ben looking to get better. What are your expectations for him this season?
Well, I expect Ben Roethlisberger to play at a high level because that's what he does. I mean, he is a top 8 quarterback, in my opinion, in the National Football League, and has been for the last several seasons. So, I mean, I look at Ben Roethlisberger, and I understand the position that the organization has put him in this offseason. They moved on from Le'Veon Bell. They moved on from Antonio Brown. They got rid of a lot of the noise, a lot of the distractions that have plagued this team the last couple of seasons. Now it's about Ben Roethlisberger being able to produce results. They got rid of distractions. Now they're saying that Ben Roethlisberger has to be able to elevate the play of everybody around him. He's got to be that false multiplier just because you recognize that you're not necessarily a more talented team than you have been in the past several seasons. So I'm looking for Big Roethlisberger to step up and really deliver for this team. A lot of those other young guys are going to be looking for him for leadership. I think that he has to be able to provide that. And so far this offseason, based on everything that we've heard, he's done that. Hopefully when we get to the regular season, he's not putting things out there in the media that are inflammatory. He's the guy that's responsible for setting the agenda for these young players. Kevin Colbert, their general manager, made it addition by subtraction this year. Now we got to see the results of the decisions that he made.
Yeah, I don't want to absolve Ben of his, negative things he's done because he hasn't been the perfect teammate. However, getting rid of the distractions of Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. As great as they were, they brought distractions. And I think getting rid of that is big for this team and big for Ben. We saw him earlier in the season. He said, I feel rejuvenated. I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, I feel like I haven't felt in years. I'm excited about this season. And so I do think he comes out, has a big year. I think their weapons, they've replaced great receivers. Maybe none as great as Antonio, but that's what they do. Every few years they've replaced a great receiver and somebody else, including Antonio, emerges. I think it'll be Juju this year. And then James Washington. I expect him to have a much better year than he did as a rookie. James Conner, he's not Le'Veon Bell, but he showed last year that he can put up the numbers that L. Bell did, even if he does it in a different way. But they do have to get with Conner and some others. Their rushing game has to improve. Ben doesn't necessarily need to lead the league in yardage and attempts like he did last year. So if they can get a little bit more balance, still rely on Ben, I think it'll be a good year for the Steelers.
Well, last year Pittsburgh decided L. Bell's a special player. We're not going to be able to replace his productivity with one player. So, no, they didn't only James Conner, which I do believe he can be a steady Pro Bowl player for you, but also Jalen Samuels. Their overall productivity, it matched what L. Bell did in 2017. So they did that. Now look from a wide receiver standpoint. How do you replace some of that productivity? I don't believe it's replaceable. So I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers have to go back to being a more rugged, a more physical team. The last time the Pittsburgh Steelers were top 10 in rush attempts in the NFL was 2010. That was the last time that they went to the Super Bowl. So the Pittsburgh Steelers get back to running the football. You don't have to worry about Ben throwing for 5,000 yards. And fortunate for the Steelers, unfortunate occasion, the wide receiver coach suddenly died, Coach Drake. And he is a great wide receiver coach. A wide receiver coach, you guys know that the wide receivers are different. That coach has to be different. And they were able to go out and get one of my good friends and bring him out of retirement in Ray Sherman. Ray Sherman coach was there with me in Minnesota as a quarterback coach, as a wide receiver coach, and as an offensive coordinator. He has coached some of the greatest wide receivers that have ever played the game. Coach Jerry Rice, Coach T.O., Coach Randy Moss, Coach myself, and a bunch of others. So for them, last year we saw Coach Tony Sparano suddenly die for the Minnesota Vikings, their offensive line coach. Their season and that group never recovered. Them getting someone like Ray Sherman this late in training camp to be able to add his expertise to a unit with a bunch of young guys, because I know Juju and them, when they see him and talk to him, they're going to have instant respect, instant credibility. So great job by Mike Tomlin giving this young wide receiving core a chance to be special this season. So they replaced the productivity just a little bit different.
Yeah, that's a great point you brought up about Ray Sherman, because I was down in Dallas when he did have T.O., and they did develop Miles Austin as a Pro Bowl player. So that's a good person to have step in the sudden loss of your wide receivers coach. But with that Pittsburgh Steelers offense, it always starts with that offensive line. And so they lost Marcus Gilbert this offseason, but the other four guys on that unit have been together for a while now. So that's a group that's also going to have to step up with the recent talent drain at the skill position. So like what they've done in terms of empowering Ben Roethlisberger, you now know that he is the clear leader in the face of the organization. But I think that there's pressure on Ben to deliver, especially the fact that they've already addressed the contract situation. So now there are no excuses for Ben Roethlisberger as to why he can't get it done. Now, he's got to get off to a great start. We recognize that that's probably going to be one of the most competitive divisions in the National Football League with the emergence of the Cleveland Browns, the Baltimore Ravens, who actually won the division a year ago. To me, it's that division in the NFC South as the best divisions in pro football in 2019. So I do understand that they're going to have some urgency about how they go about their business, but it all starts with Ben Roethlisberger setting the agenda for that team.
All right, coming up, who has more leverage right now, Zeke or the Cowboys? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First, and we are talking Cowboys, who have made the latest move in negotiations with Ezekiel Elliott. Dallas has reportedly made an offer to Zeke that would make him the second highest paid running back behind Todd Gurley. So, Broussard, who has more leverage right now, Zeke or the Cowboys?
Well, the Cowboys have the leverage because this is not a Le'Veon Bell situation where Zeke can become a free agent next summer. You know, they have control of him. He's 2 years left on his contract. Then they could franchise him for a third year. So he really can't go anywhere. Zeke could get leverage in the regular season. If Jerry's willing to go into the regular season without him, he likes Tony Pollard and all that, and say they lose the first game, or they lose one of the first two, or win them but don't look good running the ball, that's when Zeke's leverage will kick in. Jerry understands that too. Now, it could go the other way too. If they look great, Tony Pollard's running well, Alfred Morris, other guys are helping out, then that could hurt Zeke's leverage. But that's when it's going to swing one way or the other in a huge way, is after those first few games.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Dallas Cowboys have all the leverage in this situation, and it's because they cut the checks. They're the ones that determine who gets paid and when they get paid. Now, from Zeke's standpoint, the thing that he has going for him is he is the best player on that team, and you do have an owner that's in the fourth quarter, and he wants to have a championship before he rides off into the sunset. So I think with that situation, Zeke recognizing how desperate Jerry is to win, that is the one thing that he can potentially use. But that doesn't kick in until, like Broussard said, they start the regular season and you actually start playing games. I don't believe the Dallas Cowboys are a championship contending team without Ezekiel Elliott. I think it would be hard for this team to make the playoffs if they didn't have Zeke. We saw in 2017 when Zeke was suspended for those 6 games, you didn't have the same team and you didn't have the same quarterback. Dak Prescott struggled. He had more interceptions than touchdowns, more turnovers than touchdowns. So I just look at this and say, in order to have the best version of your quarterback and the best version of your football team, you need to have Ezekiel Elliott.
Well, your closing statement there, even though you started with saying Dallas has the leverage and the ownership because they do cut the checks. Yeah, in theory. But if you own a football team, it's just like prize show ponies, all right? They ain't never gave a Kentucky Derby to a donkey. If you in that type of business, you want a thoroughbred. You drafted Ezekiel Elliott out of Ohio State. He's done almost everything that you would ask him to do. So for me, it's the leverage is in Zeke's favor because the Super Bowl aspirations that the Cowboys have, they're not going anywhere. Regardless of what the pay is with Dak, they know they got to sign Dak. Regardless of what they say about their offensive line, regardless of what they say about their defense. There's one truth here. Ezekiel Elliott's the best player. And that defense is not the defense. Jalen Smith is not the same player unless Ezekiel Elliott is on that field. Last year, dominate time possession in 8 games. When that defense plays less than 30 minutes, not 7-1, not 6, they were undefeated. Ezekiel Elliott makes the money you're spending on your offensive line makes it worth it. The quarterback that you're worried about, the reason why you're not worried is because of me. And you know you can hand it to me 25 times. So, yes, in theory, as far as business, Jerry does cut the checks. But when you tell one of your kids, hey, man, I love you, regardless, that's what this is about. All along, Emmitt Smith knew. And I talked to Emmitt. We were at the Hall of Fame. I talked to him about this. He said, man, I always knew, regardless of win or losing, I knew I had the leverage because I know I'm a special player. I know I make that thing go. I know I make the offensive line better. I know I make the defense better. So it's Zeke's job just to be patient. He's a special player, and the way the team is built. This is not New England, where if Zeke was holding out New England, you know what they'll do next game? Throw the ball 50 times for 500 yards. This is not. The only way that the contract that they signed Dak to is worth it if 2-1, he can hand it to him 20, 25 times. That offensive line, because they're going to start to make them guys take pay cuts. The reason why they're worth it now is because 21, I can hand him the ball. So, Jerry, I understand this. Jerry has said, I want to win a Super Bowl before I pass away. He's in the Hall of Fame, and he didn't get in the Hall of Fame for making dumb decisions. So, for me, Zeke still has the leverage in this relationship.
And you talk about Zeke being patient, but how far into the season do you think both sides would be willing to go before figuring this out?
Well, like Chris said, Jerry Jones is thinking Super Bowl. Okay, so you can't let it go too far. You know,
yes.
If you lose that first game, I think you have to end it right there. It's a division game. You know, you need to win the division. It's not a good team, the Giants. And so I would end it right there if I'm Jerry Jones and I lose that first game. But even if they win the first few games, unless Kellen Moore turns this offense out,
yes,
and Tony Pollard is something beyond our wildest dreams, then you still, at some point, early in that season, need to go get Zeke. And Zeke, though, he obviously has to come back, week 10, to get his
Before
credit.
week 10,
credit
yes.
for the season.
Before week 10. But here's what I'll say. I think it actually gets done before the regular season starts. The report that came out said that they were willing to make him the second highest paid running back in the NFL. So that means he's somewhere between Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley. It's not far off from making Ezekiel Elliott the highest paid player at the position. So I do think that they'll get this done over the course of the next couple of weeks before they actually play meaningful games because of the fact of what you said, CC. The return on investment. Jerry Jones is a businessman. You're not going to maximize return on all the other investments you've made on your football team unless you have number 21 on the football field with him. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get the most out of your offensive line, your quarterback, your wide receivers, or your defense. He gets that. The only thing that I think Jerry Jones is trying to battle with here is not setting a precedence in terms of compensating players with years left under contract when you're trying to hold out. Jerry Jones wants all his guys in training camp and working together. He doesn't want somebody to be able to dictate to him when he is going to pay them. I think that's the part of it that Jerry Jones is fighting against. It's not a fight against Ezekiel Elliott. It's a fight against trying to set a precedent for future players negotiating contracts with the Cowboys.
Sarah, I hope him and his agent, when they decided to go to Cabo, that they looked at the rules and knowing what they could do. Because remember last year, L. Bell, we were going week to week. He didn't know what the actual rules were. Now, he didn't make a mistake, but ultimately he decided on something as he was going along. I hope they realize that if I'm not in camp, I'm willing to stay out 9 weeks. Now, most players don't have it in them. Because once you get to week number 1, you're not making that $1,000 from training camp. Yep. You're making real money. And Zeke is highly compensated already. He's not like Dak. He's not like one of these other low-round picks. He was that top 5 pick. So he's making a lot of money, and you start missing those first checks, players tend to compromise. But to me, I'm holding out the 9 weeks because I believe that's the only way that he keeps the leverage.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.